give us a sign of your presence. And welcome to Let's Talk Ghost. I'm your host, Steve.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Will.
And hey, we're going to get right to our guest tonight. We have a really special guest with us tonight. And with us, our guest tonight is a paranormal investigator and an author who has written many short stories and books, such as The Bell Witch Haunting, The Bell Witch, The Full Account, Ghostly Cries from Dixie. And we would like to welcome to our show, Pat Fitzhugh. How you doing, Pat?
Hey, Steve. I'm doing great. How are you doing tonight?
Good. We're enjoying some very nice weather up here in New York.
Oh, tell me about it. We're unbelievably warm here in Tennessee tonight. It was like 65, 70 degrees, which is unheard of this time of year.
Well, we actually hit 74 degrees today.
Wow.
Up here in New York. We're in upstate New York, near Binghamton.
Oh, okay.
And, we're actually in Owego, which is a little west of Binghamton. But, yeah, it was really nice. Supposed to be almost as nice tomorrow. We'll take all that warm southern air you want to send up to us.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, we'll do that.
Last year, we were getting that damn Canadian vortex or whatever the hell it was, and about froze everybody up here. But so how you been?
I've been doing just great. Just been very busy. How's everything been on your end? How's the show been going on?
Oh, the show's doing good. We got quite a few people that for some reason like to hear what we have to say. We haven't quite figured out why, but they do.
Yep.
And my son here, Dan, he's the one operating all this high-tech equipment.
Yep, all the computers and boards and whatnot.
And we haven't been doing as many interviews as we normally like to do because he's been going to college and working double time here. So it's been a little hectic.
It's been really
But
busy.
things are calming down. Things are calming down, so we can get back to the swing of things. Now, I guess I got a few questions for you, Pat, before we get going to. How long have you been in the paranormal business?
Oh, I have been in the paranormal community in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Too many years that I won't want to get into, but I'll say I've been in there since most people have been born. In a lot of cases, actually, even before most people's parents were born. So I've been here a long time.
Now, I'm going to probably make a wild guess that you got into it the same reason that me and my son did, is I grew up in a haunted house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that is always a plus. I didn't get to have a haunted house until I was much older.
Oh, okay.
But how was your house haunted?
Well, I think it was Casper. I always tell everybody it's Casper because it wasn't anything dangerous. But we have a house that was built in the early 1800s. We still live in it today. And at one point in time, it was used as a funeral parlor. And, during the 1800s. And the people that lived here were stone cutters, so they made headstones. And part of our basement's actually lined up with discarded headstones or used headstones or whatever they were. It's just got some, and they were abolitionists. It's just a little bit of history here.
And it's been a church. They used to baptize people down.
Yep, they actually did church services in our house. We found our attic was full of hymnals. So the house has got a lot of history. When we grew up, there was just some subtle activity and some pretty crazy activity.
Yeah, some not so subtle.
Yeah, door slamming, walking down the things coming down the stairs, and doorknobs rattling, and things just coming up missing, and just a lot of little things. But yeah, it was interesting growing up in.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it for sure.
So we've always been interested. I think at the age of I'm 60 now. At the age of 13 is probably when I started trying to figure out what was making noises in my bedroom.
Oh yeah, that's always creepy, especially if they make them late at night when you're trying to sleep, or they wake you up and you look out there in the darkness and you see nothing.
Well, I was pretty ingenious. I had a switch by my door, but my room, of course, being a young kid, my room was always a mess. So I got one of those things you could screw into the ceiling light that would have a little chain hanging down off of it.
Yeah.
And I could reach up from my bed and turn the light off without getting out of bed. And trip over everything.
Uh-oh.
So It started after about maybe 6 months of coming up with this brainstorm. I was laying in bed and all of a sudden this chain started. The chain of that, I kept hearing this like tink, 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 and it wouldn't stop. And I finally figured out it was that chain hitting against the light bulb. But it wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It would just start doing it, and if I asked it to please stop, I'm trying to sleep, it would stop. It was just something trying to contact me. And this went on for probably a year. And that's probably what got me started in it.
Oh, I think that would get a lot of people started with a lot of things there. That's, it might sound innocent at first, but then, when you're talking about it just going on and on and on, then
it would just keep doing it. And I think it was somebody was just trying to get my attention. And once it got my attention and I acknowledged it, after a while it just stopped doing it. So it was kind of weird. But we had, it was a kind of a strange house to grow up in. How did you get started?
Well, when I was little, I had a lot of trouble going to sleep, and in fact, I still do. And my mother would read me stories, and it seemed that the ghost stories intrigued me the most, and I suppose that got me to thinking, and I would wear my mind out, and those stories are the ones that would put me to sleep.
Oh, really?
And, there were quite a few different stories, but the one that really stuck out the most back then was that of the Bell Witch.
Right.
And that was because the people and places involved were actually real. And that made it a little easier to swallow the rest of the story.
Right.
So that's what really got me into all of it there.
Now, I always ask this all of our guests. Have you ever seen an apparition or a ghost yourself?
Well, that's hard to say because I'm one of those people who ride the fence. I'm one of those, if you stick a thermometer outside for 20 minutes and I read the reading on it, I'm going to question whether or not you calibrated it. That's just the kind of
there you go.
the way I am.
You're a skeptical believer.
Right. You've got to be 50-50.
Oh, absolutely. I am.
Because if you're not 50-50, then there's a degree of bias in one direction or another. And where there's bias, there's reduced credibility. So I just try to keep it right on the line and just call it like I see it. But as far as your question is concerned, I have seen things with my eyes that, I don't quite understand.
Right.
That I don't know of any explanation for. Like, for example, one time I filmed a bunch of rabbits playing in a field up there near where the Bell Witch took place. Well, after I got home and I was playing the tape back to see what all I had filmed, I saw the film, but the rabbits were no longer there.
They weren't on the film.
Right. I saw the field, but the rabbits weren't there. So,
Wow.
I've had a few things like that. As far as encounters, other like non-visual encounters are concerned, I'm an active paranormal investigator,
right.
So I'm always investigating somewhere. I'm usually running into things, whether it be flashlight responses, K2 responses, ITC box responses,
right.
cold spots, that sort of thing. I run into that all the time, though.
Right. Now, I guess you answered my next question. I was going to ask you ever got out in the field, but I guess you do.
Oh yeah, I try to make sure I do it, at least 2 to 3 times each month, and stay active.
How long have you actually been doing paranormal investigations?
Well, probably longer than most people's parents were born, but since before then. That's about all I'll say because I do not give out my age. However, I don't remember the exact year that I began it, but I know it was probably about 3 to 4 years after I began paranormal research.
Okay.
So suffice it to say, President Jimmy Carter was still in office at the time I began investigating.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Now, before we dive into the both feet into the Bell Witch, can you tell a little bit about the book you wrote, Ghostly Cries from Dixie?
Sure. Ghostly Christ from Dixie is a collection of weird and ghostly tales from around the American Southeast.
Okay.
It covers everything from haunted TB hospitals to old plantation homes to spook lights out in the swamps to lighthouses, a whole plethora of things.
Oh, okay. That sounds like I have to check that one out. Now, the Bell Witch. Now that's kind of that's really your specialty. I'm assuming.
Well, it was the first case I became involved in. There's a whole lot more to my work than just the Bell Witch, but it was the first thing I studied. So that means I've been studying it longer than the other things.
Right.
A lot longer.
Can you start out by giving us maybe a brief history or a history of the Bell Witch and what it's all about?
Sure. The Bell Witch legend comes from northern Middle Tennessee. And between the years of 1817 and 1821, the John Bell family of the Red River Settlement began or experienced this horrifying series of disturbances. The disturbances began in a very poltergeist-like fashion, with rapping on the walls, the sounds of rocks hitting the roof, chains being dragged across the floor, objects occasionally moving, that sort of thing. It was actually, first thing that actually happened, though, was that John Bell was out checking his fields one day and found a strange-looking animal, had the body of a dog, the head of a rabbit. He fired a shot, and the thing literally vanished before his eyes. Wow. And then is when the poltergeist thing started happening. And over the course of these 4 years, it evolved from a passive poltergeist entity to a very active poltergeist, and then on into more of what you would call a spirit-type entity, and then toward the end, what I would say more of like a demonic thing or demonic possession. So it had a very enigmatic character to it.
Okay. Now, what's your opinion of Martin Van Buren Ingram?
Never met him. I'm old, but I never met him.
I mean, he's the one that claimed to be in possession of a diary?
Right. That was the diary of what they call Our Family Trouble, which had been written or allegedly written by Richard Williams Bell, one of the Bell children, back in 1846, which was quite a good while after these disturbances.
Right. Now, has anybody ever seen this or read this diary other than Ingram?
Well, that's a good question. I can tell you that a week does not go by that I don't get at least 2 emails from people claiming to have this diary.
Oh, boy.
But as far as I'm concerned, I can't flat out say it does not exist because it might, but I'm not prepared to say that it exists or even acknowledge it until someone comes forward, brings it to me, and allows me to have it, carbon dated, tested for handwriting analysis and validated.
That makes sense. Yeah, because from what I've read, that apparently nobody else has seen this diary other than him. And then, of course, he's long gone. And
right.
And
he died back in 1909.
Okay.
But a lot of people say they've seen it, and a lot of people say they have it sitting on their desk, things like that.
Yeah.
But whenever I ask them, to
produce
at least send me a picture of it or produce, something to back up the claim, that's usually when the dialogue ends, and I never hear from the person again.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about John Bell Sr. before he came to Tennessee?